After a deadly home invasion, the suspects burst into tears when the judge read his verdict. Their crimes were horrific. Two teenagers charged with murder, attempted murder, burglary, and armed robbery. Jacob Mausen, 17, and Drake Campbell, 18, sat silently when they got their day in court, where the judge was deciding whether or not to grant bail. However, it wasn't the judge's decision that triggered an unexpected reaction, but the two teens who began to sob when they realized the seriousness of their situation. Just two of a five-man group, these two South Carolina teens were suspects in a grisly home invasion and murder in the quiet community of Huger. For one teen, trouble seemed to follow the family. Drake Campbell's older brother, Kenneth, was also involved in the incident and had pleaded guilty to manslaughter charges only a year prior. To say these boys were trouble would be an understatement. In the days prior to the boys appearing in front of the judge, Jacob Mausen's mother pleaded for mercy. His sister even spoke on his behalf, claiming that Jacob was her best friend and he'd simply made a horrible mistake. She didn't discount the severity of the situation, but believed overall he was a good kid. Drake Campbell's family also tried to appeal to the judge's good graces, hoping him to grant bail. The family tried to paint Drake as a good boy and not awful kids. However, the prosecution vehemently disagreed. Appearing before the judge, the prosecution argued that bond should be denied due to the violent nature of the crime and also the fact it took 4 law enforcement agencies 2 days to apprehend the offenders. Jacob and Drake's last hope all rested on the judge's good graces. No one knew how he would respond, and it was very unexpected. The boys attempted to keep calm and maintain their composure, but unfortunately, emotions got the best of them. As their charges were laid out before the judge, the boys knew things were not looking good in regards to their fates. The gravity of the situation bore down on them, and soon the tears began to flow uncontrollably. Unfortunately for the teens, a summary court judge is not able to grant or deny bail when it comes to murder charges. Therefore, even if the judge wanted to grant bail, he wouldn't be able to do so. This left their fate in the hands of a circuit court judge, but due to the violent nature of their crimes, there was little hope the ruling would turn in their favor. For starters, the teens were considered a flight risk. They were also deemed a danger and threat to society due to the extreme nature of their charges. You won't believe what they did. You probably wouldn't want to grant bail either. According to police reports, both Drake and Jacob were involved in a home invasion that transformed into an execution-style murder. For the victims, Kadeem Johnson and his girlfriend, it was simply a case of being in the wrong place at the wrong time. The couple was simply returning home for the day when they came face to face with 5 men lurking in their home. It was then things took a turn for the worse. The group of men forced Johnson and his girlfriend into the house at gunpoint. They were loud and obnoxious during the robbery. They stole her purse and also robbed the couple of roughly $3,000 in cash before tearing the house apart searching for other valuable items. However, the men didn't stop there and things took a very violent turn. In his own home, Johnson was bound with duct tape and forced to his knees. These criminals were disrespectful with everything they did. It was easy enough to just take everything and leave, but they took it a step further. There was no time to beg for mercy or plead for his life because moments later he was brutally shot in the head. Not satisfied with killing only Johnson, the group turned on his girlfriend. What they did next really showed how barbaric they were. She was shot in the hands and chest before the men fled the scene, leaving her to die in a pool of her own blood. Stealing the vehicles that were left on the property, the men sped away without a thought for the horrific acts they just committed. However, it was then the story took a very weird turn according to detectives. 3 of the suspects had fled to the woods and were later arrested. It was a strange place for them to flee to, according to the police, since the team's canine unit was able to easily track them down. Maybe they thought the woods was a good hiding place? Thanks to a tip from a local citizen, the police were easily able to locate both Jacob and Drake in the nearby forest. Drake's brother had also been arrested a few hours earlier in another wooded area. It seemed the cover of trees was not enough to save these criminals from the law. Both Jacob and Drake had spent 2 days in the woods before they were found by the authorities. According to the sheriff, the boys did not put up a struggle. They were exhausted, did not put up a fight. We brought EMS in to check them out because of the amount of time they'd been in the woods. One question on everyone's mind involved in the case is, what was the motive? Why did Johnson and his girlfriend have to be the targets? The sheriff believed that they would soon find a clear message behind the murder, but there are some clues. The fact that $3,000 was stolen during the home invasion is a major clue that the group of men knew the money would be there beforehand. It's possible they were all connected to Johnson through business dealings or friends, although no one is 100% sure and it remains a theory at this point. However, there was a silver lining in this horrible case. Johnson's girlfriend managed to survive and not succumb to her injuries. Unfortunately, it is believed she may not be able to identify her attackers at this point. Therefore, the police are relying on the public for help. The police have been quick to thank the local community for help and are hoping justice is served when it comes to the two teens involved. 2 years after the deadly home invasion and murder, the police department got their wish. Jacob Mausen was sentenced to 40 years in prison, and Drake Campbell was given 20 years. Now, with time and healing, maybe the victim's family can find peace. Mausen and Campbell aren't the only people with gut-wrenching reactions to be sentenced for their crimes. Many other hardened criminals break down when justice is served. Take Florida teen Damon Kemp, who surprised everyone at his bond hearing. Kemp was arrested by police after evidence showed he was a suspect in an unrelated home invasion and aggravated robbery at the Jade Park apartment homes. Kemp ran at officers screaming, "I killed my friend." When officers heard that chilling statement, they investigated further. It was around 2 a.m. when police encountered Kemp, and nearly 15 hours later, they determined where he lived. When they went to the apartment complex, they noticed a gunshot hole in the door and a casing on the staircase. When they entered the apartment, they found something out of a horror film. They located the bodies of Trey Ingram and Jordan Payton, friends of Kemp. Both individuals were shot multiple times and left there to die. According to the police report, when Kemp was arrested, he told the officers the craziest thing. "To be honest, I was going to unintelligible with my friend, the ace. His name is Trey Ingram. I shot him." This was just the beginning of his erratic behavior. Ingram was a student at Bethune-Cookman University and a promising athlete. Payton and Ingram had let Kemp stay in their apartment for free, a generous act that would prove fatal. The most horrific thing about this incident is prosecutors believe that the act was premeditated, charging Kemp with 2 counts of murder. When he was wheeled into the courtroom, his behavior was shocking. The judge found probable cause for his arrest, denied his bond, keeping him in police custody. When Kemp heard the news, he began snarling and screaming. His eyes, bulging from his head, showed how shocked he was by the judge's decision. He began showing his teeth in disagreement, even though he'd already admitted to shooting the 2 teens. He screamed God over and over again, shocking everyone in the courtroom. In response, the victim's family members screamed back at Kemp, showing the intense pain they were experiencing. One of Ingram's family members cried out, "Day-Day, why would you do that to Trey? Day-Day, I fed you. Trey fed you. He let you in his house rent-free. Why would you do that to Trey?" Ingram's mother even had to excuse herself from the room as she was overcome with emotion. Kemp's reactions began to cause suspicion among all that watched on. Although there was no word on a possible motive yet, many believe that Kemp's mental state isn't 100% due to his reactions while entering the courtroom. We'll update you as more information is released. Although Kemp's behavior is unusual, it's not the most extreme we've seen. Dylan Shoemaker was sentenced to 25 years in prison after he heinously beat his girlfriend's 23-month-old to death. His crime was not only one of the worst ever committed, but his reaction was also shocking. As the judge read out the sentence, Shoemaker couldn't believe his ears and began screaming out that he never meant to hurt or kill the toddler. Shoemaker was babysitting Austin when he began crying. Shoemaker, frustrated that the baby wouldn't stop, decided to beat the child horrifically. He put a pillow on the back of the child's head and began repeatedly punching him until he eventually lost consciousness. The beating was so severe that Austin had a brain bleed, eventually leading to his death. The judge berated Shoemaker, saying, "He loved you, he trusted you, and you betrayed him." The judge also questioned the validity of his story that he never meant to hurt the child, calling him a manipulator and deceiver. He even played a phone recording the teenager had with his mother while awaiting trial. "I'm a 16-year-old blonde. Probably all I have to do is cry and they're going to feel sorry for me." 13 people read letters to the court about how the crime impacted their lives, including Austin's grandfather who shared his experience. The night of March 19th, my family's life was decimated because this didn't have to happen. He had numerous opportunities to get out and seek help, but he didn't. fatal beating wasn't the first time Shoemaker used violence against the toddler. His lawyers tried to argue that this tragedy wasn't only Shoemaker's fault, leaving everyone else listening in disbelief. This didn't have to happen. If the Smith family hadn't thrown Ashley and her children out, they wouldn't have ended up at Dylan's home. Prosecutor Colleen Curtin Gable wasn't going to let that statement fly, not for a second. To blame anyone other than Dylan for what happened flies in the face of reality, she said. She went on to rationalize that although he was inexperienced with taking care of children, a normal 16-year-old would have never done what he did. The minimum sentence wasn't going to happen for this teen, as more evidence would reveal that Shoemaker tortured the toddler before his death. He reportedly slapped the child and harshly spanked him whenever he would spit food out. He also slammed the child's head against the floor while changing his diaper before punching his head. Yet he stated that taking Ashley and her children in was his way of trying to give them a better life. In the end, he had no answer for what he did and didn't do. Doctors had prescribed medication that would help him control his anger problem along with his ADD, yet he decided not to take it. Still, his attorney pushed for a more lenient sentence, citing his tough childhood, remorse for Austin's death, and inability to care for children. When asked why he didn't go for help, he said, "I never wanted to hurt Austin. I never wanted Austin to die. I don't know why I didn't go for help." Then, turning to Ashley, he pleaded. He screamed and cried at the same time as he pleaded to Ashley. "Ashley, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to hurt him. You know I loved Austin," he cried. The officers behind him told him to face the judge to take responsibility for his crimes. The court had no leniency for this child murderer. They sentenced him to the maximum punishment allowed, 25 years to life. But now there's an update on the case. To everyone's surprise, the appellate court recently modified his sentence to 18 years to life. What's even crazier is that one day he may even get out. After 18 years, Shoemaker will have the possibility for parole. If he gets out, he'll need to have constant supervision for the rest of his life.